From WSL Pure, this is One Ocean. Hello and welcome to another episode of WSL Pure One Ocean. I'm Reese. We have very exciting guests to hear from today, but first, I want to take a second to talk about what's going on in Australia right now. Wildfires have been ravaging Australia since November, and the impacts on the people, the landscape, and the wildlife there are tragic. So first and foremost, our hearts truly go out to the Australian people and all beings suffering these tragic fires. While wildfires occur naturally, it must be noted that this is happening in the hottest and driest year in Australia's history, ever. The climate crisis is making fire season worse by raising the overall temperature, decreasing precipitation, and thus increasing the risk and potency of bushfires. We want to give this topic its just due, so we're working on a bonus episode that will be coming soon. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Okay, moving on to this week's episode with sisters Melati and Isabel, who are the co-founders of Bye Bye Plastic Bags, which is a youth-led nonprofit campaigning to eliminate plastic bags and other single-use items. You may have heard of Melati and Isabel. After all, they've been featured on CNN, NPR, and more. They've given TED Talks, they've spoken at the United Nations, the World Bank, and received numerous awards and honors for their work, which is to rid their island home of Bali of plastic bags. Their real impact and influence stretch far beyond Indonesia, however, and they've been a major part of the movement away from single-use plastics. All of this, and they're still just in their teens. It's crazy. I've been fortunate to get to know Isabel and Melati over the last two WSL events back in Bali, and I always walk away feeling inspired by their energy and enthusiasm. Even coming off of a whirlwind travel schedule, I caught them for just a few short minutes while they were between trips, and they brought that energy. We jumped right into the conversation and the, at the time, very recent announcement that Bali was saying goodbye to plastic bags, with a regional ban on plastic bags and other single-use items, which is a huge win. So kudos to Melati and Isabel for all their hard work making this happen. Let's dive right into our chat with Melati and Isabel of Bye Bye Plastic Bags. So I want to talk about the Green School a little bit. How has your education at the Green School influenced your work?
Yeah, so we went to the Green School for 10 years now, so really day one when the school started. And I remember, we would beg our parents to, please, can we please go to the Green School, way back when it first started, and on day one we were there. And I think that, the space that it creates, I think, is really just allows us to take education into our own hands. And I'm speaking on a more personal experience here. It really gave me, it challenged me to say like, hey, you know what, everything is possible, but you've got to come up with it. And I think that is what I experienced as a student there, and what has shaped me to sort of be the person that I am today, and also do everything that I can do with bioplastic bags.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I'm still at school. Melati graduated last year, but we're about to go on a trip, and I'm going to miss school for 10 days. And I think if you were in a normal standardized education system, it would be really bad. Whereas Green School, is flexible and really understands, the impact of what we're doing, and allows us to understand that it's also a different form of learning, just outside of the classroom. And it's very project-based and experiential learning, which I think is really, really cool.
I mean, you both seem way beyond, like... When I think about where I was in high school, or many of us here at the WSL, so many of them are so impressed with you. I mean, everyone was like, those two girls, they're ace. I mean, they're a pro on the microphone. They know how to answer the questions. They banged it out. They're going to run the country someday. They're going to run the world someday. I mean, literally, that's the impression that the two of you give off. And I guess if there's a whole school like that, would you say you're outliers, or do you think that everyone there is doing work like that? Because, I mean, Gary and there are others who are really impressive. So,
Well, there are quite a few of us now, that after a few years, we're starting to see what's possible. But, we started bioplastic bags actually before we went to the school. And it was just simply because of the environment that we were raised in. And, having that to be Bali, or even, our family situation. And then when we went to Green School, it got boosted even more, So bioplastic bags for us as well was an added life school, is what I always like to say, because through experiences, I mean, we were like 14, 13 when we had to start dealing with government, right? Who puts 13 and 14-year-olds in a government room? Or what about huge events, networking events, shaking hands, being able to hold a meaningful discussion with CEOs and general managers, but really trying to get that call to action that, each and every one of us can make a difference. And I think by standing behind that message at such a young age, it enabled us to be, so well articulated, and because we feel what we're standing for. We really own it. And I think that comes from various things, from the Green School, from our family, from bioplastic bags, and our experiences with that.
Do you feel like the Green School is a great model for other schools that should be scaled? Do you feel like education needs to change? Do you feel like there's opportunity there?
Definitely. I think there's opportunity there. And that's simply because I truly believe that the standardized traditional education system is broken. It doesn't work for the time that we're living in now. And, whereas we were privileged enough to dip our toes into an alternative education system, I still think that there is an untapped potential here. And that's where really our next project, where we're looking at understanding the deep core of what it means to change the way we're seeing education, right? Because the way I see it is that, learning doesn't only happen in a four-walled classroom. Who says that, right? Because we're learning just as much, or I'd say even more, being out there on the field, climate striking, coordinating and facilitating meetings with other people. It's all valuable real-life skills, and I think that the education system currently and globally is not addressing it. So we're not learning urgent or relevant issues to make us motivated about anything.
Yeah, and I mean, as you think about the internet and just our more and more distributed world, there's probably a lot of opportunity there for change, right? And I think about it from the surf world. I mean, we have so many surfers who go on tour at 17 or 18. We have Caroline Marks. She's 17. She's on the world tour, so she's clearly not sitting in the classroom every day.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's how do we change education to make it fit with our modern world, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think also the way the education system is shaped right now is that it's one size fits all, right? And I think we're learning more and more that every kid and every child is different, and there's different ways that they like to be taught and different ways that they like to learn. And so I think, it's about creating those alternative education systems that are accessible to everyone, not just a select, handpicked few.
Yeah, and then you take those educated, masses, and you look at the youth movement around the world right now. It's really incredible. Looking at some of the bans that are going into place in the United States and what you all have done here. I mean, it's amazing. The youth are leading the charge, right? So it's really, we should all just get out of the way. Sadly, I now have to bucket myself into the adult category. I'd love to be on the youth side, but I think the gray hair doesn't allow it. But yeah, I did want to talk more about the ban itself, right? So the ban itself, the name, it's all in the name, right? Bye plastic bags. Clearly you went after the plastic bag. There's more to the ban, and the ban is now coming online, hopefully soon. Let's talk about the ban. Can you give me the history of the ban first?
Yeah, okay, so the history takes us way back to,
All right, maybe the Cliff Notes.
There we go. Okay, so this is something that our group specifically has been focusing on for the past 6 years, to really rally this in place. And now finally, after speaking and campaigning with local, regional, and national government, we're seeing the government of Bali actually implement a island-wide plastic bag ban this year.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So cool.
I know, and our entire team is sort of like victory dancing throughout the island, but we're also taking it very seriously because, what we've been trying to say is that, okay, we just talked about education, right? But what about that socialization period that allows people to really change their mindset and understand why this ban is coming into place, right? And I think we've, with other local stakeholders, we've done a real good job about really trying to change the narrative as to and get people feeling like they understand why. But there's still lots of work left to be done. So we're doing a lot of, we call it a plastic patrol. So our team sort of goes out every weekend, and we're sort of active citizen journalists going into these local warungs and these stores and really checking if they're already banning plastic bags, and if not, why, what are some of the challenges, because I think we're still going to be seeing those challenges, and it's important to understand what's keeping us from the goal of the ban coming in place.
Yeah, it's funny you have the plastic patrol in our office. I've become the default plastic police, but I don't want to be that, and I've never tried to be that. I actively tell my coworkers, hey, I don't. If you use plastic, that's okay.
Right.
I don't want to be here to shame anybody or anything like that. But then they all talk about it, behind my back. Like, did you see so and so had a straw the other day? They'll like report on each other, and then they started self-reporting, even to the point where they once made a wall of shame, so to speak. on their own. I had nothing to do with it, but somebody had a plastic
Oh my
water
gosh.
bottle, and they're sorry, Reese, and I'm like, it's okay. Don't say sorry to me. Just say sorry to the ocean.
Yeah, right. No, but it's serious. Like, it's becoming this, like, especially in Indonesia, and especially again from the young people, it's becoming such a trend to say no to plastic. And it's not, it goes beyond obviously an Instagram post, but we're taking this very seriously. So we're having our, tumbler water bottle everywhere we go. Our, metal reusable straws. We're bringing our own bags, and there's a real sense of pride to this. Like, we're really owning this, and it's just been a real revolution that we've seen throughout our 6 years. But what is in the span of maybe I think 8 months that this has gone so intensely across the entire country, where we're seeing it become such a massive trend to the point where I think that there's no turning back now. No way.
Yeah, totally. Now, at the same time, there's been some recent news and some recent trends, both with 2018's, China's National Sword Program, which has essentially disrupted the entire global recycling trade. Right. So for those who don't know on the podcast here, China basically said, we're not taking your trash anymore. I mean, do you want to explain either that? No?
I mean, it's such a complex and huge issue, but basically countries that used to be shipping off their waste to other, well, not poorer, but yeah, essentially developing countries. There we go. Thank you. Now they're not allowed to send that waste off. They're just not allowed to say, okay, goodbye waste, another country can deal with it. Now the problem that we're seeing is that countries are actually having to face the fact that they're producing so much waste. And what are they going to do about it?
Right.
And this is the essential question that nobody has been asking for generations. And, generations, but decades, we've been ignoring this question. And suddenly now with this regulation that China is saying, no, we're not taking anyone's waste anymore, we're finally starting to ask it, and we're asking it on a big scale, because this goes directly back to governments, but also to the source of plastic pollution, right? And that's the production that we have to end. So it's an interesting space that we're in right now. And for example, a country like Indonesia, that in 2017 we actually made a goal to reduce 70% of our waste by the year 2025, right? And this was stated at the United Nations conference in New York in 2017. Now 2025 isn't that far away, right? And if we think about it, that's about 6 years away. Same amount of years, that we've been campaigning to get rid of the single-use plastic bags. Not 70%, but just one single-use item, and it took us the same amount of time. So we have our questions with, this entire generalized, scope of what's happening right now on a global scale of dealing with our waste and how we're going to start reducing it. Setting big goals like that, or big statements like China rejecting all other waste, or countries making big goals. It's about making those realistic and tangible steps that we know we can start today with. Right. And whereas there can be complications and, a lot of waiting time before we get the official policies or regulations set in place, it needs to happen faster, because, and coming from the younger generation, again, it's all happening in our lifetime. And that's where we have the loudest voice of demand, where we say we want change and we want that right now.
It's amazing. I mean, in general, the youth movement, you look at like Greta Thunberg and what the two of you have done, and just all around the country and around the world, the youth are leading the way. It's so powerful. Do you want to speak about Youthtopia at all?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to tee it up a little bit before, but I didn't know if it was not out yet or not.
Yeah. I mean,
and this won't go
sure.
to air for a long time, so we actually...
Yeah, no, I would love to.
Okay.
And especially, just tapping into what you just said of like the youth movement, it's rising. And this is just specific to, I think, again, what's happening now. We understand that the world is in trouble. There are so many issues. It's not just plastic pollution. It's climate change, rising sea levels, deforestation, gender equality, education systems. It's everything. And I think young people are starting to recognize it, but they're even better, they're starting to recognize their own power. And so over the past 6 years, where we've had the opportunity to connect with over 50,000 students face to face, meaning we've been in different classrooms, different school systems, we're realizing that there are so many bright young people who are two things: either already on the same path as us, standing up for what they believe in, or who have really, really great ideas but don't know how to take it to the next level. And so with our next project, Topia, we aim to do just that, to give them the skills, the tools, and the experience so that they can come in, find their passions, grow their skills so that they can go back home and really create that change.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
so cool.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm really pumped for it, because I think that this is really just simply the next step. right? And if we're looking again at like what's happening with the climate strikes, with kids really understanding this, seeing real life stories on Instagram, social media, we need to upscale the attitude and like the mindset of other frontline change makers to make it accessible to each and every young individual, right? So it's about how we can all start answering the what can we do now question.
Totally.
And
please.
I think also throughout our 6-year journey, you know, as young people, the thing that's kept me the most motivated and empowered and inspired is seeing that, you know, me and Melati, we're not alone. We have our entire team. And then going on beyond that, at every conference we go, at every speech we do, we see that there are so many other young people out there in the world doing amazing things. And I think, you know, Youth-topia, again, is about really creating that physical and online platform where we can create a network and community of youth where we can really, you know, learn from each other and have that peer-to-peer education.
Very cool.
Hey there, if you're like me and you bike to work every day or you travel a lot and like having that perfect blend of comfort while still looking good, then our friends at Outerknown are here to hook you up with a discount on their C jeans. C stands for social and environmental accountability, and these jeans really take that to the next level. C jeans are made in the world's cleanest denim facility. It's solar powered. It uses a closed loop washing system to save water. The jeans are air dried, saving even more energy. And of course, they're made from organic cotton and they're guaranteed for life. So if they wear through, Outerknown will repair, replace, or recycle them. If you need some jeans, men's or women's, hit up outerknown.com and enter the code OCEAN at checkout for 25% off your full price order on C jeans or any other items. That's outerknown.com, outerknown.com. And remember to use the code OCEAN at checkout for 25% off. Check them out today. Tons of styles. Outerknown.com. And don't forget, promo code OCEAN for 25% off. All right, back to our show.
Now, it feels like now we're here in Bali. We're at Karamas, right? We're next to some of the best waves in the world. We're here because this is the WSL Pure podcast. It's all about surfing. So connecting it to the ocean, it feels like that has been a catalyst for this whole movement, right? Like for a long time, we had recycling, quote unquote, and we knew that we were throwing trash into landfills. And then all of a sudden it was kind of like Great Pacific Garbage Patch, for better or worse, how you think about that as a theme that's been in the news, right? But it was a Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It was images of dead whales. It was images of seabirds with plastic in their bellies. Like it kind of, the ocean almost brought it back to us. I feel like, I don't know, would you agree? Do you feel like that was there, or do you feel like there are other examples out there that are non-ocean examples that maybe we're not thinking of or something? We in the surf world really, we get upset when we see that image of a dead whale or a dying dolphin or something, or when we see it in our surf. Like right here, the surfers run into it. They're out there in the lineup, and they're, Ace Buchan the other day told me, I can't fit enough trash in my pocket of my board shorts. He's going to like design new board shorts to fit more trash in his pockets for surfing in Indo.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of asking, it's like, it feels like the ocean has played a strong role in that. And would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. It's played a huge role in that because it translates something that no other example could have translated, right? There's this connection to the ocean that, of course, all surfers have, but I think it goes deeper. It goes beyond that because the ocean makes up so much of the place that we call home. And it also has other living beings in it. And I think that's where, it strikes a chord no matter what, because we're seeing the harm that we're doing with our daily activities and hitting it right back home to another species. And I think that that's got a lot to do with, that translation, that real catch that the ocean has been able to give back to us.
Was it part of a driver for you too?
I mean, growing up on the island of Bali, for sure. I mean, we don't get much out on the surfboard, but definitely out into the ocean. Our parents raised us for the first few years on a boat where we actually traveled around Indonesia, and
that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was really, really a beautiful way to be brought up because, a boat was our home. So we moved, every time we would wake up, we'd see new islands around Indonesia, the most beautiful, untouched waters. I remember flushing my toilet on the boat, and then we were in such a remote space that all of the, what do you call those? It glowed, the water glowed.
The phytoplankton?
Phosphorus.
Yeah, phosphorescence.
So, and like all of those unique, like adventurous moments of really being out there and connecting on such a pure level with nature, but mostly the ocean, right? Yeah. And I think that has enabled a huge sense of responsibility, but also a sense of like love. It just comes down to that, like we protect what we love. And yeah, it's just as simple as that sometimes.
Cool. Isabel? Anything on the ocean? I didn't know you guys grew up on a boat.
Yeah,
That's
no,
amazing.
it definitely was like a huge part of me and Melati's bringing up. But I think also, we live 100 meters from the beach. So every time me and Melati were young, we'd have these like weird little adventures where we just pack a backpack for a day, with a water bottle and a sandwich and be like, hey, bye, mom and dad, we'll see you later. And like 80% of the time we'd end up by the beach, and it was sort of, our quiet space, our playtime space, and we'd, build huts in the middle of the day because it got really hot and things like that, and jump in the ocean with our friends. And yeah, it was always just such a present part of our upbringing that I think we really were able to create that connection with the ocean.
That's
even
awesome.
if we're not surfers, sadly.
It's okay. You've surfed and you love the ocean. I mean, you grew up on a boat. You spent more time on the ocean than most people. That's super cool. We got a little off track. I do want to go back to the ban a little bit. Going back to the ban, the ban is just for Bali, yeah?
Yeah. Well, so far, the one that we've seen put in place is happening in Bali, and it came in a set of 2 phases. So the first one came from our mayor of Denpasar city, Rai Mantra, and he introduced the ban just for the city and just for modern retailers, and that happened on January 1st, 2019. And the governor, very shortly after, he introduced the island-wide ban, not just for modern retailers, but really targeting everything and anything. So plastic bags will be fully banned on the island as of midway in 2019. So the socialization period has been very heavily focused on just Bali, yeah.
And then do you think that there's hope for a ban at the national level?
Oh, yes.
Is there progress there? Is there?
Yeah.
I know for a while it was bouncing back and forth between the two, right? The ban was let's do it at the government level, and then it was no, do it at local level, etc.
So in the goal that I mentioned earlier of, Indonesia really setting that high target of reducing 70% by 2025, somewhere in that national regulation, they've cut it down into different ways to start tackling that goal. But I think in there, banning plastic bags is already a point of attention. So we're getting discussions where national government is seriously putting this out as a realistic solution for all regional governments throughout Indonesia. But also there are cities in Indonesia that have already banned plastic bags, and this is taken down on a way more local authority execution. But Banjarmasin banned plastic bags, and in Kalimantan a few cities have banned it. So the reason and the special unique part about Bali banning it is a lot of islands look up to Bali because of how transit it is, but also just how if they can do it, we can do it too sort of mentality, which I think it really enables and is empowering for other islands and other local authorities to see the different ways that, first it happened on a mayor level, then it happened on a governor levels. So that gives authority to almost all local politicians to really see, okay, we don't have to wait for that national regulation to come in place. We can start taking that power into our own hands and creating that change.
That's awesome. It makes me think of some kids in a town near where I'm from. I'm from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, the northeast of the U.S., right? And there's a small island called Martha's Vineyard and a small town in Martha's Vineyard called Chilmark, I believe. And these kids, I think they were in the 6th grade, wanted to ban bottles. And they said, we're going to go after the water bottle. And we're going to go after soda too. And so they were able to convince their whole town. Now, granted, it's a small town, but they convinced their whole town hearings, they got the whole movement going, went to the local shop owners and said, hey, we want to do this and da-da-da. And we're able to convince the shop owners to go along with it. And so the town now has voted to pass the legislation that will ban any single-use plastic bottle under 32 ounces, I believe, including soda.
Oh, that's awesome.
So cool. And
That
the video,
is
I'll send you the
amazing.
video. We'll put the video in the show notes as well. But the video is so incredible because you have these kids who get up and they say their piece, and then they even have the shopkeeper who says, we thought this was going to hurt business, but we look at it, it's the right thing to do, And when they pass the rule, and I'm getting chills just talking about it right now, it's so cool. The whole room erupts, and I my wife makes fun of me for not being a very sensitive person sometimes. She's like, where's your emotion? Da, 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 da. And when I watch that video, I cried a little bit. Like, so cheesy. She's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, look at this. It's incredible. The kids did it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's just really powerful to see that local action. I think a lot of times people kind of go, what can I do? Yeah. Right? Like you said before, youth go, what can I do? And acting locally is just such a powerful thing, just getting started in your local community.
For sure. And I think with that story also what I picked up from it, which I find really inspiring and really moving, is that the businesses, realize that, okay, maybe, it's not the most profitable and I'm not going to make the most money out of it. And I'm not going to do it because it's the hottest trend or the next cool thing to do, but it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
And I think that's really inspiring. And slowly you're starting to see it in industries everywhere that, big companies with platforms are being like, oh, okay, we have the responsibility to do what's right as well.
100%.
So that's really cool.
And I mean, going back also on the other point is that we need those local heroes to give that push, right? And with bioplastic bags, keeping that in mind, is that now we're in 40 locations around the world where bioplastic bags is represented.
Whoa. Chapters, so to speak?
Yeah,
cool.
chapters.
Amazing.
So we have 40 team leaders, and these kids are awesome. I mean, they're all in middle school, high school, or university, and this is honestly one of my favorite aspects of bioplastic bags. We have team meeting calls with all the team leaders once a month, and that's really like if I'm exhausted, I can't wait to get on that call, because I'm listening to all these stories of what they're doing locally all over the world, and they come up with like even better ideas than anything we could have come up with here on Bali, right? So like they're working with all these universities and they're creating a university bans plastic bags and becomes plastic free, or they're doing massive cleanups with different organizations. It's beyond incredible, but that's definitely it, where we're seeing that around the world, kids who see what we're doing in Bali say we want to do the same back where we come from, right? And that's bringing such an easy concept of what bioplastic bags really stood for. At the beginning, saying no to plastic bags, that's our vision, but secretly, almost like just without knowing, very, very organically, we became this living example that kids can do things. Literally this embodiment of a vision for other kids to say like, okay, we can copy and paste that, because if they can do it, we can do it too. And I think that mindset is just so powerful in the way that we've created a really relatable story. So when we're standing in front of kids, they see themselves. And I think that is something that can really drive home change, if kids can understand why and what they're doing.
Well, I know that when I left here last year, I left inspired by the two of you, and you inspired all the WSL as well, from Sophie, our CEO, on down to, every person on the team. So I think you're 100% right about that. The two of you have stepped up and created a movement in the plastic fighting sphere, and now are going beyond that, it seems, to educating more youth to go tackle more issues. And there's a butterfly effect that's going to be really incredible. So thank you for all that you do for the planet. And as a surfer, thank you for the work you do that helps clean up the ocean that we surf in, and we're trying to do our part to support. But yeah, it's really incredible, and it's been really a pleasure to have a conversation here.
Yeah, well, thank you for allowing us to be a part of this platform as well, and for having us, last year and this year a part of WSL.
We're happy to support. Any parting thoughts that you want to hit on? Any notes?
I think that, like something that I've been pulling up again when I speak to people, it's that sometimes it can be super overwhelming when you discuss these sort of topics. It's a big picture we have to paint for ourselves. But I think breaking it down is very helpful. And if there's one thing you can go away with, I think it's this mindset that all you have to take care of wherever you go, no matter where you are, just focus on taking care of that 1 meter around you. Like you have this big bubble around yourself, and everywhere you go, you have to take care of it. If it's the person right next to you, or if it's the environment right next to you, that's all you're responsible for. And imagine if every single person started thinking like that, imagine the world we'd be living in.
Pretty powerful way to end here. That's amazing. Thank you, Melati, Isabel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just focus on the 1 meter around you. I really love that, and it's really stuck with me since our conversation. That's something we can all do. Maybe your 1 meter becomes 2 or 3 or more, maybe not, but it's such an amazing guiding mantra and enables all of us to take action. Since we spoke, which was actually last May, Melati and Isabel, of course, have gone way beyond the 1 meter around them. Here are just a few of their highlights. In August, Melati and Isabel were awarded Indonesian Heroes in Jakarta by OCBC Bank. Melati won 7 Millennial Heroes campaign. In November, Isabel spoke at the Global Leaders Roundtable. Melati and Isabel are being awarded as Role Models of the Year in Germany. Also, Melati has finished filming a feature-length documentary called Bigger Than Us that will come out in spring 2020. And they were added to the list of 50 badass women by InStyle US, which is pretty freaking rad. And speaking of badass women, with us once again is our friend Kim Hogan. Kim, you're back. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
It was nice to have you on the very first episode, and then you disappeared. You went away to Hawaii for a while.
I did. I went to both our Maui and Oahu events, so I was gone for an absolute eternity.
And how was it? How'd it go?
It was great. It was amazing. Both events were incredible, and won some titles.
Won some titles?
I
Delivered
didn't. I didn't.
You won a title? What do you think about Melati and Isabel? You've gotten to see them kind of in our events, and are, I assume, a fan of theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how I could not be a fan. I think the work that they're doing is really incredible. And from someone who was an absolute degenerate as a teenager, I feel really excited by what they're doing and their promise as they get older.
Is that their greatest power, that they're really just like, hey, do something? All of you adults did nothing. Like, do anything. No, I'm just kidding. They truly are an inspiration. I mean, I feel like we introduced them to a bunch of people at our events and everyone walked away and went, wow, they are so impressive.
Yeah, they're really accomplished and well-spoken and buttoned up, but they still have this sort of freedom about them that is this youthful sort of exuberance that's really infectious. So it's sort of a lethal combo.
Yeah, they're rad.
Yeah.
Kim, you are back here to do Flotsam and Jetsam, and you did homework. Like you did a deep read over the break.
Yeah, I did.
What do you got for us?
I did. So there was this article in the Atlantic in their January-February issue.
You are so posh. You only read the New York Times and the Atlantic.
And the New Yorker. It makes me
Oh,
the most.
excuse me.
But yeah, and so it's this incredible long read about deep sea mining. And it's about sort of the possible effects of mining in the deepest parts of our ocean.
Yeah, so there have been a few articles passed around about this because it's all actually coming up. So many different countries are trying to mine in this Clarion-Clipperton Zone, or CCZ, extends across 1.7 million square miles between Hawaii and Mexico. And apparently there's a bunch of these nodules or whatever of things that we need for batteries.
Right. And it creates this really interesting conversation that is, we're building all of these electric vehicles that are supposedly better for the environment. But then in order to create the batteries for them, which happen to use the same materials that are batteries in our iPhones and our computers and all this other technology, we have to mine them at the bottom of the ocean. So it creates this, at least what I took out of it was that it creates this sort of dialogue, which is one sort of evil lesser than another.
Yeah, it's pretty bonkers. Well, you can mine them in other places, not just the ocean.
Yes.
And the question is, like, can we do it in a safe way for that local environment? I know that like Bolivia has a ton of material for batteries. Mm-hmm. So the question is, like, can we do it safely to then get batteries that we need for electric vehicles, or is that worse than just using gas and oil?
Exactly.
Anyway, it's a deep read. Go check it out.
Sure
We'll
is.
link to it in the show notes. The other major issue that I hit at the top of the show are the fires, the Australian fires. I am also snobby and listen to the New York Times or read the New York Times. But they actually have some really great coverage. They have a great Australian bureau, and their coverage has been really solid, particularly how they're pointing out, like, look, this is straight up an anomaly, and this blows apart anything that's happened in the past, and it is directly linked to climate change. And I think that's kind of for me, that's the real story. Like, first and foremost are the people and the animals and the habitat, and we think about them first. But I think this is just such a very, very crystal clear example of what's to come, and we probably haven't seen the worst yet, and that's really scary. But I think what's been cool has been seeing the surf community step up. And seeing even, in the Golden Globes or whatever it was, some of the actors, like Russell Crowe, I think, like, sent in his speech and was like, hey, Gladiator says this is climate change. And seeing some of our athletes step up, which is pretty cool. Have you seen some of their stuff?
Yeah, I saw Lakey's post the other day, and it's just been sort of around, and like Mick and Joel are doing that. They're like auctioning off a day to surf with them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where do you get to surf with them?
Somewhere in Australia.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know.
But yeah, it's
it.
sort of been around, and the whole like Wright family is really involved. Like Tyler's really passionate about animals, and like she had the little tiny dots in her story the other day. There was like so much information around like where to donate and how to help. And it's another one of those, like we talked about it when we were talking about the Fight for the Bite, where you're sort of surprised to see this community come together for this thing. And it's really beautiful, and it's really powerful to see surfers sort of using their platforms and their voices and their passions to support something that really matters to the whole world.
For sure. And I think one of the coolest people I've seen who's supported, who surfs or has surfed, is Celeste Barber. I love her. My wife and I crack up at her Instagram. She's hilarious. If you don't know her, she's an Australian comedian / I don't know, political figure maybe someday. I don't know. She's amazing. But she started a fundraiser, and she's raised like $26 million in just a couple of days.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
She's doing more than, like, there's so much on the internet that's like she's single-handedly like bolstering the Australian, like she's an Australian government on her own. Because,
she's winning.
Yeah.
For sure. That's right. Well, I mean, again, like it always goes to whenever there's these tragedies, the old Mr. Rogers sort of adage of like, look for the helpers and be inspired by them and then figure out how you can help. So we'll link to a couple places where you can donate. That's it for this week's episode. Kim, Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks everyone for listening. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, rate, and review, as it helps people find this podcast and it helps us reach more people to increase ocean literacy. As always, you can find us online at WSL Pure and WSLPure.org, or feel free to shout us an email at oneocean@WSLPure.org. Shout us an email? Did I really just say that?
Yeah, that's not.
Just shout us an email, everybody.
Shout emails.
Some people do.
do.
Shoot us an email, shout us an email, whatever you want to do. Tell us how you're helping improve the 1 meter around you. Thanks for listening. See you next time.